Good morning and welcome to this Cardiff University webinar. This is the latest in our series under the title of Informing Policy, where the university provides a space for academics to speak directly with policymakers on a variety of topics where their research can help inform policy development. Today's webinar session looks at universal free school meals under the cooperation agreement between Welsh Labour and Plaid Cymru, and it's arguably one of the most ambitious policies that has emerged from this cooperation. Professor Kevin Morgan and LACA Regional Chair Judith Gregory discussed the commitment to deliver free school meals to all primary school aged children in Wales and the barriers facing local authorities.
Many thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Judith and I are very grateful to you all for that. We'd very quickly run through the context for school food reform, the examples of what we've done to learn from good practice elsewhere, and then we'll key in on the two key issues: the challenges for the Welsh public food system, because school food sits in a public food ecosystem, as we call it, and then Judith will look at the granular challenges in terms of delivering from a caterer's point of view. So that's the very brief agenda this morning. It's worth beginning, I think, by saying that the school food movement globally is growing in scale and in confidence around the world, and Wales has always been very much part of this movement. Some of you may remember, we've been doing this for over 15 years in Wales, and some of you will remember our Appetite for Life policy. This was launched back in 2008, but it stemmed from a few years of consultation. And school food reform in the UK wasn't invented by Jamie Oliver. It really begins in Scotland with their Hungry for Success programme, and we followed shortly afterwards. So we've been in this game for quite a long time, which I think shows the difficulties and the challenges facing us with school food reform. We've worked for many years in the university with some of the best caterers in the European Union. And one of the best of all that we have found was the city of Malmö, which is one of the leading cities in the leading country for offering free school meals. And we've worked with Malmö for many years, and their school food reform system has consistently been based on some very, very simple principles. And they're the SMART principles, as Malmö says. And I won't read all these out, but you can see how they try to embrace social, economic, as well as environmental dimensions in their school food reform. And this is what I hope and believe that we are doing as well in Wales. As I said earlier, it's important, I think, for us to see the school food system not as a silo unto itself, as it were, but as embedded in a public food ecosystem. And we think it needs to be addressed as a system if we deliver on the promise and the potential of universal free school meals. I tried to identify some of the challenges to this public food system in a report that was commissioned by Welsh Government, and which I hope Welsh Government is going to publish next week, a report called Values for Money. And that report, based on over 40 interviews with key players in public procurement, in supply, in finance, audit, and so on and so forth. Through those interviews, I tried to identify some key challenges for this public food system. And the challenges are very simple to distill. At the heart of our challenge is a disconnect between supply and demand. What's increasingly being demanded is what's not being supplied in sufficient quantity and qualities in Wales, particularly with respect to white versus red meat. We're a red meat nation on the supply side, but increasingly on a child's plate, it's white meat. And of course, non-meat in terms of our demand for fruit and veg. And our Welsh horticulture sector needs to be boosted if we to meet this new demand. Secondly, we need much more collaboration from farm to fork in the food chain. And increasingly, we'll need to rely on the roles, almost the public value roles of intermediaries like Castell Hywel and Harlech Foods, who are not just ordinary firms in the food system, but they are absolutely vital parts of the local food infrastructure in Wales. And I think we need to see them in those strategic infrastructural terms. Another challenge we identified in the report was that good practice has been a bad traveller, as we say, and we need to make sure, particularly with respect to procurement, how we design contracts, how we weight the balance between price and quality, how we factor in and embed social value, well-being clauses into our tenders. The capacity to do this is very, very varied across Wales, and we need to ensure that good practice becomes the norm, not the exception in Wales. And then finally, in terms of looking at Welsh Government's own role in this, we think that food policy needs to be much better integrated with other policies that Welsh Government is pursuing, particularly with respect to foundational economy, procurement, and in terms of business support for local SMEs and grounded firms. And my final slide is this, really, to try to underline the point that our UFSM policy is compelling, but it's challenging. And I think the commitment to free school meals for primary children ought to be the occasion for a major step change in our policy and practice. It's no good just scaling up the status quo, in other words. And if we can tap this potential, as I believe we can in Wales, it offers the promise of what we call the triple dividend in terms of a healthier population, economic benefits from more locally produced produce, and more grounded firms in Wales, which are committed to sustainability and well-being, as well as promoting more generally a more sustainable environment. So that's the triple dividend promise, if we can get this right. But in terms of Welsh Government, what we'd like to see is a much more integrated set of policies to use the new food policies in the pipeline on community food, social partnership and procurement, and above all, foundational economy. We need much more integration and joined up policy if we could tap this potential. So at this point now, I'll hand over to Judith.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Judith Gregory. I'm LACA Wales Regional Chair. And for those of you that are not aware, LACA is a national organisation that represents education catering providers across the UK and is made up of 11 regions, of which Wales is one of them. I also head up education catering for Cardiff Council, but I'm here today with my LACA hat on and representing local authorities in Wales. I'm also Vice Chair-elect for National LACA, so in 2 years' time I will become Chair of National LACA and therefore will be representing education caterers across the UK. So just to give you some background to the landscape of school meals in Wales, within the 22 local authorities that we've got in Wales, the majority of the school meal provision is delivered by local authorities, with just 2 local authorities contracting out their school meal provision to contract caterers. This is in sharp contrast to the school meal provision in England, where the service is very fragmented with numerous different types of providers, for example, contract caterers, multi-academy trusts, individual schools, local hospitality businesses, and local authorities. Scotland is very similar to Wales in the type of provision, i.e. that it's mainly local authority providers. So the introduction of universal free school meals in Wales has been very fast moving. From the announcement at the end of November 21 to the first meal being served to reception pupils in September was just 9 months. Obviously that involved a great deal of work in the background, and all of this achievement to be able to provide for reception children from September is down to the dedication and hard work of the education caterers across Wales, and I think they should be applauded for their achievements. The rollout is proposed to continue with years 1 and years 2 from April next year, with the dates for the remaining year groups yet to be confirmed. Can I move on to the next slide, please, Kevin? So the commitment has been welcomed but the implementation brings to light many challenges currently faced by local authorities. catering staff, suppliers and others involved in the school meal provision. These range from inadequate kitchen and dining facilities in schools, which were never designed when the schools are built to provide meals for all pupils attending each school, to what pupils actually learn about food and nutrition in school, and ultimately their experience of their school meal. So looking at this slide, all of these areas are important consideration for the rollout, but I'm just going to focus on 3 of those areas. And starting off with the infrastructure, this obviously covers the capacity of the kitchens and the dining rooms, as well as staffing, which includes both catering staff, as well as those staff who are employed by schools to supervise the pupils at lunchtime. Increasing the capacity of school kitchens is a significant challenge. Inner city schools and schools with listed building status have very limited options. And whilst one solution for these type of schools is to provide what is called a kitchen pod, which effectively is a modular building that can be transported onto the school site, the schools need to be able to have that outside space to accommodate it. And obviously to do that, it eats into the play facilities and sports facilities that the school may have. For the majority of schools, heavy catering equipment has to be upgraded and increased to produce the extra meals. And this in turn reduces the space available in the kitchen for food storage, for example, fridges and freezers, but also more importantly for staff to be able to work in a safe environment. In order to install the equipment, building works are needed to ensure adequate power supply, drainage and plumbing. There are a limited number of specialist kitchen equipment suppliers across Wales, because obviously we want to support all of our local suppliers, which in normal circumstances is fine. They can manage the requirements from local authorities. But when we're rolling out a project like this, we have got all 22 local authorities across Wales all trying to procure similar equipment at the same time, which together with the other issues that's being faced in terms of the pandemic recovery, the after effect of Brexit, the Ukraine crisis and fuel prices, does lead to a difficult situation. Or other aspects of the infrastructure that we need to consider is the extended lunch times. Some of our schools already have 4 sit-ins for lunch due to the size of the dining areas, and many more now are looking at introducing staggered lunch times, which then obviously impacts on the school day as well as impacting on teaching staff. Additional dining furniture has been needed, as currently those pupils who would normally bring in a packed lunch would normally eat in dining in classrooms or other areas of the school. And a consequence obviously of additional dining furniture means that there needs to be additional storage, because again, most schools have multi-purpose halls, so furniture needs to be stored away. And most importantly, the other consideration in terms of the infrastructure, we need to ensure that pupils have enough time to sit down and enjoy their meals. Providing extra meals means more staff needed in kitchens. Where possible, this has been done by increasing the hours of existing staff, but some staff are unable to take up the offer due to, for example, caring responsibilities, limits on the amount of income they can earn due to affecting benefits received. And some of the ageing workforce that are employed in the industry simply do not want any extra hours. Recruitment of new staff is difficult. This year we have been impacted, as many others have, by the significant decrease in the number of people active in the labour market. There is competition for similar staff from numerous hospitality outlets as well as retailers. And we don't, as local authority catering providers, don't have that flexibility to increase hourly rates or offer financial incentives in the same way that the private sector can. Schools have also had to increase their midday supervisor staffing, and they already face a difficult task with that, as it's always been a traditional difficult role to fill because it's very much focused on a couple of hours in the middle of the day. To move on to food, we have had to revise our menus so that they're more efficient to prepare given the increase in numbers. But most importantly, when we're doing that, we the emphasis has been on the ethos of homemade food cooked on site. We're also seeing an increase in requests for special diets. Previously, we have provided special menus for the more routine special diets that pupils will have, for example, gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, carb counting for diabetics, etc. But with the universal provision, we are now seeing more complex diets which require professional specialist dietetic support. And some local authority providers are now employing public health dietitians at additional cost to the service to cope with this demand. Next slide, please, Kevin. So just to give you an example of the work that we've been doing across Wales in school kitchens, this is some photographs of a recently upgraded school kitchen to manage the extra number of pupils. So this is a large primary school which has 680 pupils on roll. And in each kitchen we have what we call the centre island, which is where all the cooking is done. The top picture shows 2 combi ovens on one side of the island, and then the bottom picture shows the other side of the island, which shows a combi oven and 2 oven ranges. Combi ovens are very versatile. They cook food very quickly. They can steam, bake and roast using a combination of steam and convection. And they are also used for cooking pasta, rice and vegetables, and are obviously very efficient, energy efficient. So this is why we've actually gone with combi ovens, because obviously it meets all the needs for catering for a large number of pupils. Just for your information, each combi oven in the photo there can cook 200 meals, hence the reason why there are 3 for over 600 pupils for this particular school. Next slide, please, Kevin. So just to move on to funding, as the rollout progresses, Welsh Government have set aside a revenue budget, which obviously increases as the rollout moves forward. The target uptake at the moment is 86%. It's too early to actually evaluate what the uptake has been on the reception children starting in September, because many reception children, when they start school, they have a staggered start, so September figures weren't a true reflection. And this month is going to be difficult to assess as well, because obviously schools are very busy with Christmas lunches, and the uptake on those days increases substantially. The unit meal rate has been set by Welsh Government, which is the rate that would be paid to each local authority for each meal that's being provided. That's been set at £2.90, but it is already under review due to obviously the increase in food costs, and we also need to consider that this programme, there's a very strong emphasis on locally sourced food, which is going to drive up those costs. The meal rate would normally cover labour, food and overheads for providing the service, but that does vary from local authority to local authority. And then obviously in terms of the funding for all of the capital works on the kitchens, there has £60 million has been distributed to local authorities. And finally, just to finish off, at the end of the day, this is all what we all want to achieve, the opportunity for all pupils to have a healthy school lunch. Thank you.